Hello everybody, Cobra Axis and Allies here. If you're joining me from the 5-minute review of American Minorities at War, then thank you for doing that. And if you've just decided to jump in here in the longer video, I definitely thank you for doing that too. So today we are doing a quick review of American Minorities at War. Now, this is a expansion set from historicalboardgaming.com for the game Global 36, Global War 1936 to 1945. Now, basically in this set you're going to get 17 markers, all of various different rules and with various corresponding units. So let's get right into how you're going to start this this expansion out once you buy it. So first up, the American player is going to implement a scheme. And now, what a scheme is basically just a change of rules, pretty much, for the player. So basically, America, once they're at war, they're going to pay 15 IPPs on their turn, and it's basically going to allow them to basically get these markers. Once the 15 IPP are paid, every single turn, the American player is going to roll a D12, and if they get a 1 to 6, then that allows them to grab one of these markers. And now basically, you can place these markers in a cup. If you have it like I do, where you glue your pieces to the markers, you could just use a randomizer on a cell phone, or even a die. And yeah, so basically, after that, you basically get to pick out your markers. Now, we'll just go through all of these one by one and kind of just show you what they do and their uses. So first up, we've got the Red Ball Express. And now the Red Ball Express was a special convoy system that kept trucks and supplies moving into France after the invasion of Normandy. And so when drawn, set this marker aside until you're ready to use it, as in the American player. Place the Red Ball Express marker once during the game after a successful amphibious invasion of the European continent. The Red Ball Express marker allows 2 additional units to non-combat move into the country the turn it was captured. So basically how this works is you say invade Normandy, and then by normal game rules you're not allowed to resupply or non-combat move into newly conquered territory. So the Red Ball Express allows you to do that for America. So say they send in some forces to take out Normandy. Afterwards, with some additional transports, they could send in a couple more units just to shore up the lines and everything. So, pretty good unit, or marker. Next up, we've got the 65th Infantry Regiment, and that is these guys here. Now, the 65th Infantry Regiment was a Puerto Rican regiment that was basically raised in 1920, and pretty much how these guys were is that Puerto Rico, historically, ever since the Spanish-American War, has been pretty closely tied to America, and during World War I and World War II, they fought alongside Americans. So basically, these guys, when you draw this marker, you're just going to place the chip under an infantry in Puerto Rico, and so that's basically just giving you a free infantry. There's no bonuses with this guy or anything, so yeah. You're pretty much just getting that free infantry, and I think Puerto Rico is worth 1 IPP, so even if you just leave him there, he can defend that territory for the American player. Next up, we've got one of these logistical markers, the Navajo Code Talkers, and so the historical overview, some of you may know this if you've watched the Nicolas Cage movie, Wind Talkers, and so the U.S. Marines used Native Americans to send coded messages. About 400 to 500 of them served as code talkers in the U.S. Marines. Choctaw and Cherokee Native Americans pioneered the strategy in World War I. In World War II, Navajo, Lakota, Meskwaki, Comanche, and Spanish Basques were used as code talkers. So, once you draw this marker, you set it aside until the American player is ready to choose. Once you choose to use the marker, The U.S. may move up to 3 additional ships or submarines, 1 extra movement. All moves moved in this way must start in different zones and end in the same zone. So basically, you've got 3 different ships, like all in different zones. So say you've got like a destroyer here, and then another one here, and then another one here. You could basically move all the units to one zone, and they'd get an additional movement. So that is a pretty good marker if, say, America has some transports sitting off of San Francisco and they just took maybe Hawaii back from the Japanese, or they want to get some more units moving forward. They could give up to 3 units a +1 movement. So say if you're from a naval base and the ship already has a movement of 3, you could get like 5 movement of 5, which is pretty far across the Pacific. So another pretty good unit. Next up is the 442nd Japanese-American Regimental Combat Team. And basically, during World War II, the Americans treated the Japanese citizens of America with suspicion, internment, and mistreatment. But despite that, many native Hawaiians with Japanese ancestry joined the U.S. Army and formed their own combat regiment in 1942. So, when this unit is drawn, you may place this marker and an infantry in the continental United States, so anywhere within the U.S. kind of home country. And basically this just is a normal infantry, but it has a +1 attack and defense. And the really cool thing about this guy is that +1 attack and defense, so he's a good infantry unit, and if you send him off away to combat, only in Europe, that's another thing, he can't fight in the Pacific theater, but if you send him off to Germany and he gets destroyed there, you can rebuild this guy in America once again for 3 IPPs like a normal infantry. So basically with this guy, you've got a free, basically elite infantry every time it's destroyed. So next up is the last logistical marker, which is women workers. And the background behind this is millions of women filled the roles of the workforce that was opened up by the loss of many men as they went off to serve on the front lines of the Pacific and in Europe. And basically, when the U.S. women workers marker is drawn, increase the output of all U.S. major, medium, and minor factories by 1 in the U.S. home country. So, pretty straightforward. You can just represent this by maybe placing it in America or something, but by doing so, all factories are going to get a +1 in terms of building. So minor factories instead of 1 can build 2. Mediums can do 3, or can do 4 instead of 3, and so on for major factories. So now we've got one of the first fighter groups. This is the 332nd Tuskegee Airmen fighter Interceptor Squadron, and basically this was a all African American fighter group during the Second World War that served mainly in Italy or Allied possessed Italy, again doing bombing missions against the Germans and Italians that were holding out in the north. So when you draw this marker, place this unit beneath a free fighter in the U.S. home country. So again, anywhere in the U.S. home country. This unit gets a +1 interception value and +1 to all air superiority rolls. So basically the first round of combat against enemy fighters. So again, a pretty straightforward free fighter that you get to place in America, and it's got a +1 interception for, say, defending against bombers or escorting bombers, and plus it gets that that +1 air superiority roll, so it can basically take out fighters pretty well. So next up, we've got the 452nd Anti-Aircraft Battalion, and the 452nd was an all-African-American anti-aircraft battery that served with distinction in the Second World War. And the 452nd shot down 87 aircraft and had the highest hit kill rate of any African-American unit, and the third highest among just American white African-American units. And when drawn, place this unit beneath an anti-aircraft gun, and this unit gets an additional fourth shot at 3. So basically, it's like a normal anti-aircraft gun, but instead of 3 shots at 3, it's going to get 4 shots at 3 when defending against aircraft. So, nice little boosted anti-aircraft gun. Next up, we have the 158th Regimental Combat Team, otherwise known as the Bushmasters. And basically, this was a team of highly trained military specialists that were formed out of the Arizona National Guard, and they were mostly made up of Mexican American and Native American soldiers. So, when this marker is drawn, place it beneath any regular infantry unit already in the southwest United States. If none are present, keep this marker here until it is there's an infantry moved into that territory. This unit gains a +1 attack and defense. So this time you're not going to get any free unit, because likely basically by placing this unit in the southwestern United States, that might represent the actual minorities, and then you need to actually send in an infantry to be attached to that small group of minorities that then boosts that infantry. So giving you a nice boosted infantry class unit with a +1 attack and defense. Next, we have the 522nd Field Artillery Regiment, and basically this was a combat team mainly made up of people of Japanese ancestry living in Hawaii. So basically people that were kind of like the Japanese American infantry, only these were men that were serving as artillery, attached to artillery units. So when this marker is drawn, place it beneath any artillery unit already in the United States, except for coastal artillery, and that unit re-rolls a missed attack 1 time each combat it is involved in, whether it's the attacker or defender. So again, this is another one of those units that you have to basically place underneath an artillery class unit in the United States. You can't just get a free artillery out of this. And basically, since it says only coastal guns can't be chosen, you could place this underneath an anti-aircraft gun to get a extra shot if you miss, which is a pretty nice unit. So next up we have the 761st Tank Battalion, and basically this was an independent tank battalion composed of mainly African American soldiers, and the 761st Tank Battalion, otherwise known as the Black Panthers, were formed in 1942, just after the Japanese, months after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, and they won. Out of 675 men, they won 256 Purple Hearts and 1 Medal of Honor out of all of them. When drawn, place this marker beneath any medium armor or light armor in the United States, and this armor gets a +1 combat value. So this is basically another one of those units that you're going to have to basically have a unit in the United States to then place this marker under to give them a boosted combat value. Next we have the 92nd Infantry Battalion. That is these guys here. The 92nd Infantry was a segregated African American unit formed in 1917, and the Buffalo Soldiers, as they were known, were the only African American unit to see a frontline combat in the European theater during the war, or during World War I, that is. During World War II, they served with distinction during the Italian campaign and suffered 3,200 casualties, a quarter of their fighting force. The 92nd captured 20,000 German prisoners, and it received over 12,000 decorations, including the Medal of Honor. When this marker is drawn, place this marker beneath an infantry in the southwest United States, and basically this is just a free infantry that goes in the southwest United States. No boost or anything, but just a free infantry for the US player to use. So next up we have the Chinese American Composite Wing, otherwise known as the CACW. And basically the Chinese American Composite Wing was a joint US air wing active in China from 1943 to 1945, and this unit operated bombers and fighter squadrons inside of China to resist Japanese occupation. So when drawn, the US player can lend-lease a fighter or medium bomber to the KMT, the Chinese nationalists, and this unit may reach China through normal lend-lease methods, and so basically this is pretty much to have this activated, the US is going to have to lend-lease a fighter, so therefore buy a fighter for the KMT, then send it over, and finally, once it's there, it receives this marker and is now under KMT control, and it has the special ability that all anti-aircraft fire and interceptors suffer -1 to destroy this unit. So overall, this one's a little more, I guess, like lackluster in the sense of it does have that special interception value, or the negation to anti-aircraft guns firing on it. The only problem is the fact that America's going to have to, get this marker randomly and then have to buy a fighter or medium bomber, send it over to China, and have to basically get it past the Japanese onslaught that is usually controlling the coast. So hopefully when America draws this, India is maybe still British controlled and the Burma Road is open, because otherwise this unit is going to have a tough time actually getting to China. So next up we have the 12th Infantry Philippine Division, and basically this was a army of the Philippines that was formed in the Philippines by the Americans who owned it at the time, and basically they fought for the Battle of the Philippines, trying to defend it against the Japanese invasion in 1941, but were unsuccessful with their American allies. So when this marker is drawn, place it in a free infantry in the Philippines, and they function as regular infantry. So this is another one of those units that's, because America has to be at war with a major power, and especially because Japan's usually the one that instigates that, this marker will probably have a tough time actually getting into play because of the fact that the Philippines are going to, America, like, let's say, draws this on their third turn that they're at war. Well, by that time, Japan's probably going to have their hands on the Philippines. So, yeah, there is the slight problem of just that not being able to get to action. But it is a nice unit, and if, per se, I've seen times when Germany has declared war on America, but Japan has stayed neutral, so I could see that could go into action, and it would definitely be a help in the defense of the Philippines. So next we have the AMJ, or the 201st Fighter Squadron, and that is these guys here. And basically what these guys were Mexico joined World War II in 1944, and basically, or 1942, so kind of a little bit early on in the war, and they ended up, Mexico had a decent army and air force, but they didn't have any way to really get it to anywhere, so what they did was kind of meshed with the U.S. Fighting force, and what the 201st was a all-Mexican pilot air wing of the U.S. Air Force, where basically Mexican pilots that had been trained and were fairly competent at their jobs were sent to the United States, and then the United States lent them aircraft to be used. So when this marker is drawn, set it aside until the U.S. aligns Mexico. So that's usually done by the U.S. paying some IPP as per the normal rules and aligning Mexico to their side. So once Mexico is aligned, place this unit underneath any tactical bomber in the United States. So the tactical bomber must be existing already. And this unit, other than its tactical bomber capabilities, it can also do 1 to 2 strategic damage, flying as a strategic bomber, kind of like a medium bomber. So basically it's a tactical bomber that can also kind of be classed as a medium bomber, which I think is a pretty cool unit. Even though it has to be, again, attached to an American unit that is already in America, I definitely think it's a pretty useful unit. So yeah. And there is just a little note that if you're using the Elite Fighter Squadrons expansion, you can use the P-47 fighter bomber, and that is basically just the special aircraft that they were using during the war. So next up we have the 100th Infantry Battalion. This is another one of those Japanese-American battalions that served during the war. And when this marker is drawn, place it beneath any regular infantry that is in Hawaii or San Francisco. This unit will not retreat. It gains a +1 attack and defense, and when destroyed it can be rebuilt in the US, and it can also not be, it can't, be used in the Pacific Theater. So that kind of sucks in the sense that it can be built in Hawaii or San Francisco, so it's going to be like at the Pacific Theater, but you're going to have to ship it over to Europe or South America or whatever. But definitely, this one's pretty cool because unlike the other kind of integrated Japanese-American battalion, this one can't retreat, so basically you're just going to be screaming bonsai as you run at German forces, as they did in real life in Italy. So yeah, and again, like the other one, it is pretty cool in the sense that you can rebuild this unit after it is destroyed. So if you pull these two guys early on in the game, you've basically got an elite infantry spawn point in the United States. So you can have basically 2 elite infantry that are +1 attack and defense that you can just keep rebuilding as they get destroyed. Which this one might a couple times because of the fact that you can't retreat if it's unfavorable circumstances. So next up we have the 555th Paratrooper Company. And basically this was a all African American unit that fought during the Second World War. And basically they did not actually see combat during the war, but were soon integrated into the 82nd Airborne Division, which then saw combat. And basically, this unit, when drawn, may be placed under any airborne unit in the United States. And once per combat, this unit may re-roll any misses. So this is a pretty cool unit. Another one of those units that you have to have an actual airborne infantry on the board. And I gotta say, just overall, when I play this expansion, I refrain from doing the rule where you have to actually have a unit there and then you get to place one of these guys. I think it's a little more fun and interesting just to, have a free, give America a free unit. And I've played probably 4 times with that mindset, and it's never been that overpowered, especially if you're using other expansions like Elite of the Reich or anything like that. So yeah, pretty good unit. Definitely good when it comes to the re-rolling the pull misses and everything. So lastly, this video is getting kind of long, but we're finally at the end. We've got the USS Mason destroyer escort, and basically this was a escort destroyer that was one of two in the one of the two ships in the American Navy during the war that was all African American, or largely composed of African Americans, which is pretty crazy to think about, the fact that so many African Americans living in America and they only had two ships that had a majority of African American sailors on board. But basically, when this marker is drawn, place the USS Mason marker under any existing destroyer or torpedo boat destroyer adjacent to the United States home coast, and this unit may reroll any missed defense roll against a raiding submarine if it's on escort duty. So this thing basically is you get to place it under a destroyer or torpedo boat destroyer, and you're basically just given the option to put it on escort duty, and it will get a +1 defense roll against submarines, which is a pretty nice unit, especially if it's in the Atlantic. If you put this in a key position, like one of the crossroads between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, it'll definitely help kind of deter Axis units from attacking that zone. So yeah. So overall, we're finally done with this video. This is almost 30 minutes now. But yeah, so overall, I really like this expansion. Every time I've played Global War, I have used this expansion. And just a note to people out there who may want to try this, the way I usually play this expansion is, like I said before, these units I usually just give to America for free. And again, like one free unit a turn really doesn't balance that much, especially when there's units like this that may not even get to be placed. So yeah, but overall I really like this expansion set, and I definitely suggest picking it up, and maybe if you don't have the money even to just kind of use a chip to represent these markers. It adds a lot to the game, and yeah. So I hope to see you guys again, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Cobra, out.